What if I told you that one of the most shocking betrayals in recent WWE history happened right in the middle of what was supposed to be the ultimate display of unity? What if I told you that two women who stood side by side, who fought together against impossible odds, who seemed destined to dominate the women's division as an unstoppable force, suddenly became the bitterest of enemies in the blink of an eye? What if I told you that Charlotte Flair, the Queen herself, turned her back on Alexa Bliss in the most brutal, most personal, and most devastating way imaginable? This is not just another tag team breakup. This is not just another storyline twist. This is a moment that sent shockwaves through the entire WWE Universe, a moment that left fans gasping in disbelief, a moment that changed everything we thought we knew about loyalty, ambition, and the price of championship glory. Tonight, we're diving deep into the story behind Charlotte Flair's betrayal of Alexa Bliss, a betrayal that happened in the heat of a massive tag team match that nobody will ever forget. So buckle up, because this story has everything: drama, deception, championship gold, personal vendettas, and a twist ending that literally nobody saw coming. This is the complete breakdown of how friendship crumbled, how trust was shattered, and how Charlotte Flair reminded the entire world why she's called the Queen, and why crossing her path can be the biggest mistake of your career. Let's rewind the clock a few months before this betrayal took place, because to truly understand what happened in that ring, you need to understand how we got there. Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss weren't always allies. In fact, for years, they existed in completely different orbits of the WWE Women's division. Charlotte was the daughter of the legendary Ric Flair, born into wrestling royalty, genetically superior as she loved to remind everyone, a woman who carried herself with an arrogance that was somehow both infuriating and completely justified given her track record. Multiple-time women's champion across brands, Royal Rumble winner, WrestleMania main eventer. Charlotte's resume spoke for itself. Alexa Bliss, on the other hand, came from a completely different background. She wasn't born into this business. She had to claw, scratch, and fight for every opportunity she ever received. And fight she did. Alexa transformed herself from a sparkly, cheerful competitor into one of the most cunning, manipulative, and psychologically dominant champions in WWE history. Her mind games were legendary. Her ability to get inside her opponents' heads was unmatched. And her championship reigns proved that size didn't matter when you had the intelligence and ruthlessness that Alexa possessed. These two women had crossed paths before. They'd faced each other in singles competition multiple times. Sometimes Charlotte won. Sometimes Alexa won. But there was always this underlying tension, this unspoken rivalry based on completely different philosophies of what it meant to be a champion. Charlotte believed in physical dominance, in proving she was simply better than everyone else through sheer athleticism and the Flair legacy. Alexa believed in psychological warfare, in breaking her opponents mentally before she ever broke them physically. So when WWE announced that Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss would be teaming together for the first time ever in a massive tag team match, the WWE Universe had questions. How would this possibly work? Could these two massive egos coexist? Could these two completely different styles mesh together in the ring? And more importantly, could they actually trust each other? The match was set up as part of a special pay-per-view event. Charlotte and Alexa would be facing two of the most dominant and dangerous teams in the women's division. The exact composition of their opponents doesn't matter as much as understanding what was at stake. This wasn't just about winning. This was about proving something. For Charlotte, it was about showing that she could lead anyone to victory, that her excellence elevated everyone around her. For Alexa, it was about proving she could stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone, even someone as decorated as Charlotte Flair, and hold her own. In the weeks leading up to the match, we saw Charlotte and Alexa doing something that seemed almost impossible. They were actually working together. They trained together. They cut promos together. They appeared backstage in segments where they discussed strategy, where they seemed to be building genuine mutual respect. Charlotte acknowledged Alexa's cunning. Alexa acknowledged Charlotte's athletic superiority. It seemed like the perfect partnership of brains and brawn. But if you watched closely, if you really paid attention to the subtle details in those weeks of build-up, you could see the cracks forming. You could see the moments where Charlotte's ego would flare up, where she couldn't help but remind everyone, including Alexa, that she was the queen, that she was the one with the pedigree, that she was the real star of this partnership. And you could see the flashes in Alexa's eyes, those brief moments where her smile would freeze, where you could tell she was cataloging every slight, every condescending comment, every reminder that Charlotte saw herself as the superior partner. There was one particular backstage segment about 2 weeks before the match that, in hindsight, told us everything we needed to know about where this was heading. Charlotte and Alexa were discussing their opponent's strengths and weaknesses. Alexa suggested a specific strategy, something psychological, something designed to make their opponents second-guess themselves and make mistakes. It was classic Alexa, using her mind as a weapon. And Charlotte? Charlotte actually laughed. Not a supportive laugh, not an encouraging laugh, but a dismissive, condescending laugh that cut through the air like a knife. She said something along the lines of, "That's cute, Alexa, but leave the real wrestling to me. You just stay out of my way and I'll handle this." Alexa's face in that moment, if looks could kill, Charlotte would have been finished right there. But Alexa being Alexa, she just smiled that calculated smile and said, "Of course, Charlotte. Whatever you think is best." The WWE Universe saw that exchange. Social media exploded with speculation. Was there trouble in paradise? Were Charlotte and Alexa already on the verge of implosion before the match even happened? Or was this just the typical competitive fire between two champions who were used to being the center of attention? The night of the match arrived. The arena was absolutely electric with anticipation. This was one of the most talked about matches on the entire card, not just because of the star power involved, but because everyone wanted to see if Charlotte and Alexa could actually function as a cohesive unit or if this partnership would crumble under the weight of their own egos. Charlotte's entrance was everything you'd expect. The music hit, the rope flowed, the arrogance radiated from every step she took down that ramp. She looked like money, she looked like royalty, and she made sure every single person in that arena knew they were in the presence of greatness. She climbed into the ring, did her signature pose, and waited for her partner. Then Alexa's music hit. And the contrast couldn't have been more stark. Where Charlotte was all elegance and superiority, Alexa was intensity and edge. She walked to the ring with purpose, her eyes locked on the ring, on the task ahead. When she stepped through the ropes and stood next to Charlotte, you could feel the tension. They acknowledged each other with a brief nod, but there was no warmth there. This was business. This was two competitors forced into an alliance neither of them truly wanted. Their opponents made their entrance next, and let me tell you, they looked ready for war. They had been talking trash for weeks about how Charlotte and Alexa were a dysfunctional disaster waiting to happen, about how their egos would be their downfall, about how easy it would be to divide and conquer these two champions who could barely stand to be in the same ring together. The bell rang, and the match began with Charlotte starting for her team. And let me tell you something, Charlotte Flair in the opening minutes of that match was absolutely phenomenal. She was showcasing everything that makes her one of the greatest women's wrestlers of all time. The chops that echoed through the arena like gunshots. The athleticism that allowed her to hit moves that someone her size shouldn't be able to execute. The power. The technique. The presence. She was dominating her opponent, hitting big moves, getting near falls, and you could see her feeding off the crowd's reaction. But here's where things got interesting. Alexa was standing on the apron, hand extended, calling for the tag. Charlotte had been in the ring for several minutes. She was starting to show signs of fatigue. The smart wrestling move would be to tag out, let your partner come in fresh, maintain your team's advantage. But Charlotte being Charlotte, she waved Alexa off. She didn't need help. She was the queen. She could handle this herself. Alexa's expression on the apron was priceless. You could see the frustration building. You could see her thinking, "I knew this was going to happen." Charlotte continued her assault, but her opponents weren't pushovers. They started working together, using quick tags, cutting off the ring, isolating Charlotte from her corner. And slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Charlotte was getting worn down. The moves that came so easily in the opening minutes were getting harder to execute. She was breathing heavy. She was moving slower. And Alexa? Alexa was practically screaming for the tag now. Hand extended, voice rising above the crowd noise, telling Charlotte to make the tag. The WWE Universe was chanting for it too. They wanted to see Alexa get in there. They wanted to see if this partnership could actually work. Finally, after taking a particularly brutal sequence of moves, Charlotte had no choice. She crawled toward her corner, reached up, and made the tag. Alexa exploded into the ring like a house on fire. And let me tell you, Alexa Bliss reminded everyone in that arena why she's a multiple-time women's champion. She was hitting everything. The speed, the agility, the precision of her strikes. She caught one opponent with a picture-perfect DDT. She launched herself off the ropes with a crossbody that nearly ended the match right there. The crowd was going absolutely insane. Alexa was proving that she belonged in this match, that she wasn't just Charlotte's sidekick, that she was every bit the competitor that the Queen was. She set up for her finishing move, the Twisted Bliss, climbing to the top rope with the crowd on their feet. But here's where Charlotte's ego reared its head again. Instead of staying on the apron and trusting her partner to finish the job, Charlotte climbed into the ring. She started directing Alexa, telling her what to do, how to position herself. Alexa, who was literally about to hit her finish and potentially win the match, had to pause and deal with Charlotte's unsolicited coaching. That split second of hesitation was all their opponents needed. One of them recovered, scrambled to the corner, and shoved Alexa off the top rope. Alexa crashed hard to the mat outside the ring. Charlotte, realizing what happened, turned her attention to their opponents, but the damage was done. The momentum had shifted. What followed was absolute chaos. All four women ended up in the ring at various points, the referee losing control of who was the legal competitor. Charlotte and Alexa tried to regroup, tried to get back on the same page, but you could feel that something had fundamentally broken in their partnership. The trust wasn't there. The chemistry was forced. Their opponents smelled blood in the water. They targeted Alexa, who was clearly hurt from her fall to the outside. They isolated her in their corner, quick tags, cutting off the ring, classic tag team wrestling. Alexa was fighting with everything she had, but she was taking a beating. And Charlotte? Charlotte was on the apron, hand extended, ready to tag in and save the day. Alexa fought her way toward the corner. The crowd was rallying behind her. Every punch, every kick, every desperate move to escape and make the tag was met with thunderous support from the WWE Universe. She was inches away from Charlotte's outstretched hand, inches away from relief. Inches away from tagging in her partner who could turn this match around. Their hands connected. The tag was made. Charlotte launched into the ring with House of Fire intensity. She was hitting everything. Big boot. Backbreaker. Natural selection. The crowd was going absolutely bonkers. She had one opponent down for the count. She went for the cover. The referee slid into position. 1, 2. But the other opponent broke up the pin at the last possible second. Charlotte was furious. She grabbed the opponent who broke up the pin, set her up for another natural selection. But Alexa, who had recovered somewhat on the apron, blind tagged herself in as Charlotte bounced off the ropes. Charlotte didn't realize the tag had been made. She hit her move, but the referee wasn't counting because she was no longer the legal competitor. Charlotte turned around, confused, and saw Alexa climbing into the ring. And the look on Charlotte's face, pure indignation. How dare Alexa tag herself in? How dare she try to steal Charlotte's glory? This was supposed to be Charlotte's moment, Charlotte's victory. But Alexa was the legal competitor now, and she was sizing up her opponent for the Twisted Bliss. She climbed to the top rope again, the crowd absolutely electric with anticipation. Charlotte stood in the ring, watching, her body language screaming with resentment. Alexa launched herself into the air, executing a picture-perfect Twisted Bliss. She landed flush on her opponent, hooked the leg, and the referee counted. 1, 2, and then Charlotte Flair pulled Alexa off the pin. The arena erupted in shock and confusion. What just happened? Did Charlotte just break up her own partner's pin attempt? The referee was confused. Alexa was on the mat, looking up at Charlotte with absolute disbelief. Charlotte stood over her, and the look on the Queen's face was cold, calculating, and completely devoid of any regret. Alexa slowly got to her feet, getting right in Charlotte's face, demanding to know what the hell she just did. Charlotte didn't back down. She said something that the cameras didn't quite catch, but based on Alexa's reaction, it wasn't an apology. And then Charlotte shoved Alexa hard. Alexa stumbled backward, right into the waiting arms of their opponents. One of them rolled up Alexa from behind. The referee, still legal because Alexa was the legal competitor, dropped down to count. 1, 2, 3. The match was over. Charlotte and Alexa had lost. But the real story was just beginning. Charlotte immediately rolled out of the ring as the bell rang, leaving Alexa alone in the ring with their victorious opponents. Alexa sat up, her face a mixture of shock, betrayal, and rising fury. She rolled out of the ring and immediately got in Charlotte's face on the entrance ramp. The microphones picked up fragments of their argument. Alexa was screaming, "What did you do? Why would you do that?" Charlotte's response was ice cold and brutal, "I don't share the spotlight with anyone." Alexa shoved Charlotte. Charlotte shoved back harder. Security rushed in to separate them before this turned into an all-out brawl. The WWE Universe was on their feet, not sure whether to cheer or boo. completely absorbed in the absolute disintegration of this partnership. As they were being separated, Charlotte grabbed a microphone from ringside. She pulled away from security just enough to make one final statement. "Alexa, you were never my partner. You were always just in my way." And then Charlotte delivered the most vicious move of the entire night. She wasn't done with just verbal destruction. As Alexa was being held back by security, turned slightly away from Charlotte, the Queen seized her moment. She broke free from the security guards holding her, charged forward, and hit Alexa with a devastating boot right to the back of her head. Alexa crumpled to the ground. Charlotte stood over her fallen former partner, looked down at her with complete disdain, and then did her signature strut, the one she inherited from her father, right over Alexa's prone body. The arena was absolutely losing their minds. Some fans were booing Charlotte viciously for such a cowardly, brutal attack. Other fans, the ones who appreciated Charlotte's heel work, were cheering her ruthless efficiency. But everyone, absolutely everyone, was talking about what they just witnessed. Charlotte grabbed the microphone again as medical personnel rushed to check on Alexa. "Let me make something perfectly clear to everyone watching," Charlotte said, her voice dripping with venom and arrogance. "I am the queen of this division. I am the standard. I am the benchmark. And I don't team with anyone. I don't share championships. I don't share glory. And I certainly don't share the spotlight with someone like Alexa Bliss, who thought she could ride my coattails to relevance." The boos were deafening, but Charlotte fed off them. "Alexa, you made the mistake of thinking we were equals. You made the mistake of thinking that standing next to me somehow elevated you to my level. Let me educate you. You will never be on my level. You will never be in my stratosphere. You are a former champion. I am a future Hall of Famer. You had a nice little run. I am building a legacy that will last forever." Alexa was being helped to her feet by medical staff, clearly dazed from the attack. Charlotte continued her verbal assault. "And do you want to know the best part? I planned this from the very beginning. From the moment this tag team match was announced, I knew exactly how it would end. With you on your back, looking up at the lights, realizing that you never had a chance. Because Charlotte Flair doesn't do tag teams. Charlotte Flair doesn't do partnerships. Charlotte Flair stands alone at the top of this division, and she always will." Charlotte dropped the microphone and walked up the ramp, her music hitting, playing her out like a conquering hero despite the chorus of boos raining down from the WWE Universe. She didn't look back at Alexa. She didn't show an ounce of remorse. She just strutted to the back like she had just won the most important match of her career. Meanwhile, Alexa was slowly regaining her composure on the entrance ramp. The camera zoomed in on her face, and what you saw there was chilling. The shock was gone. The hurt was being replaced by something much more dangerous. Alexa Bliss looked absolutely murderous. Her eyes were cold, calculating, and promised retribution. As medical staff tried to help her backstage, Alexa waved them off. She grabbed a microphone herself, her voice shaking with rage. "Charlotte, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." The crowd popped huge for that statement. Alexa continued, her voice growing stronger and more focused with each word. "You think you're the queen? You think you're untouchable? You just declared war on the wrong person. I've beaten you before, Charlotte. I'll beat you again. But this time I'm not just going to beat you. I'm going to destroy everything you hold dear. Your legacy? I'm coming for it."